Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start by screen sharing here. Most of you know me. I'm Noelle, the Tourism Experiences Manager with the Frontenac Arch Biosphere. And before we officially begin, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that the Frontenac Arch Biosphere is on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. The Frontenac Arch Biosphere was established on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Algonquin Anishinaabe, and we thank these nations for their stewardship over this land. So I'd like to welcome everybody. This is our first webinar for the Sustainable Tourism Program. It's very exciting. We've had our asset mapping workshops over the past month. We've had 3 of them. And you've all been participating in those, and we've gained a lot of knowledge about the different assets in the Frontenac Arch Biosphere. So I appreciate everybody who took the time to come out to those in person or virtually. I'd like to start out with a very brief presentation on the Sustainable Tourism Program. Some of you have recently joined the program as recent as 2 days ago, and some of you have been with us for the past 2 months. So some of this might be old news. I'm going to share it just to give everybody an understanding of what it is that we're doing. So who are we? The Frontenac Arch Biosphere. We were designated by UNESCO as Canada's 12th biosphere reserve in 2002. We've since been referred to as biosphere regions. So there's 19 biosphere regions in Canada, and you live in one. That in itself is amazing. And where are we? Located centrally between Toronto and Ottawa and encompassing the 3 counties of Lanark, Leeds, Grenville, and Frontenac. And here you can see in our map, we span from Brockville down to Gananoque and up north to Westport. A little bit about the Sustainable Tourism Program. Through a series of workshops and webinars, local tourism businesses, stakeholders, and attractions will participate to gain new knowledge about the world of sustainable tourism, culminating with the launch and marketing of our new eco-destination website, fabexperiences.ca, featuring these businesses. So far, we are now at 76 registered businesses, and our goal is to be at 100 registered businesses. This can be done. Our vision and mission with this program. Our vision is to have our biosphere recognized as the #1 eco-destination in Canada, known nationwide as a leader in sustainable tourism and eco-travel opportunities. Our values. As a designated biosphere region, it is in our nature to appeal to the eco-conscious traveler and to protect the area that draws in thousands of tourists year after year. To move my screen so I can read our mission. I wrote this, I should know it. To provide training and resources to the tourism industry with the help of our friends at GreenStep tonight of the Greater Biosphere region through a series of webinars and by offering exposure on fabexperiences.ca to eco-conscious travelers across Ontario, Canada, and beyond. A little bit about fabexperiences.ca. You may recognize the old Fab Experiences. This, in its heyday, would do about 30,000 copies, this travel guide. What we're doing essentially is taking this and turning that into a digital platform through the new website. And it's so much more than just a website because it functions as an interactive travel tool. Through geomapping software, travelers will be able to access the best of the biosphere, all in one convenient location, fabexperiences.ca. The website will function as an interactive travel tool through story maps and pre-planned routes, tours, and guides broken down by category, or travelers can plan their own on the main map. And just a little sneak peek here. One of them is called the Family Field Trip. This is in Brockville, and a lot of the businesses that are in that itinerary are probably here tonight. So a little sneak peek for them. And soon you'll be able to test out our story maps after we launch. I'm really excited for you guys to play around on the new website and see how these digital travel guides interface with the travelers on both a computer as well as the mobile version. So it's very futuristic technology and they're very beautifully done. We're really proud of them. We actually partnered with Laurier University to develop these digital travel guides, which is a partnership we're very proud of. The students put a lot of work into these. It was their culminating assignment for the year and they just turned out so beautiful. So I think you guys will be proud of them as well. They're featuring your businesses and our beautiful biosphere. A little bit about the Sustainable Tourism Program. So our timeline with these 4 webinars, we're having one each month. The dates and times are listed below. These are also communicated to you all through our outreach email. So keep an eye out for anything coming to you from FabX at FabN. And how you can share your experience with the travelers. Businesses can proudly display their pledge to sustainability with their FAB Experiences badge, showcasing their efforts in the Sustainable Tourism Program. We have these now. They're made with sustainable inks. These will be going out in your welcome kits. We're working with a lot of local artisans on the things that will be included in your welcome kit. So we're just waiting for a couple more things to come in. There's some local art that was created of our biosphere that will be in there as well. So I'm really excited for you guys to receive those welcome kits, and your badges will be in there as well. And our upcoming travel campaign, we're calling this Travel Proud. There are so many reasons to be proud of the biosphere and where we travel. And this campaign, developed by Daniel, our marketing coordinator, who's here with us today, is so beautifully done. And of course, when you're proud of a region that you travel to or that you're offering to travelers as businesses like yourselves, when we're proud of that, we're more likely to want to take care of it. And that's the whole idea behind Travel Proud. It's very beautifully done. And I'm excited for you all to have a sneak peek at that. If you haven't yet, it is up on our Fab Experiences YouTube page. Here's a little information about myself. This will also be available to you in any of the outreach communications. Feel free to email me, call me at any time if you have any questions about the program or about the new website. I'm here for you through these contact channels. I also want to give a quick thank you to our amazing partners. We've partnered with Parks of St. Lawrence, Lanark County, Frontenac counties, all 4 Frontenac counties, Parks Canada, Destination Stewardship, GreenStep as well, who they have their own slide coming up, who's here with us tonight. We are stronger together under one arch. And there's our little logos here. So this has definitely been a group effort. We've all been working really hard on this program and this project and the new website for the past few months. And it really feels like everything is coming together in these few weeks, especially with tonight being our first webinar with GreenStep. So I just appreciate all of the help from all of our partners. And a quick thank you to all of you. And this is my daughter and a blue heron. And I said this yesterday at a tourism summit when this slide came up. I think subconsciously I chose this picture of my daughter because it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, which is that we do not own the land, we borrow it from our children. And there's many variations of that, I'm sure you've heard, and it really resonates with me when I think about this program and what it means to have stewardship over this land and our biosphere. So I think that's why subconsciously I have this picture of my own daughter in here. And it just, to me, what it means is that everything that we're doing, all of this hard work, our biosphere, GreenStep, all of you in these businesses, what we're doing isn't actually for us, it's for them. So I really appreciate everybody coming together for this amazing cause. And now I'd like to welcome our friends at GreenStep Solutions. Angela Nagy is the CEO of GreenStep Solutions, a company that has provided sustainability strategies and programs for thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises since 2008. Through their Sustainable Tourism Division, Angela and her team provide solutions that help tourism destinations and businesses to improve their sustainability performance, including sustainability strategy development, assessments, certifications, eco-funding, consulting, training programs, and carbon footprint measurement. Angela has been trained by former Vice President and Nobel laureate, Al Gore, David Suzuki, and IPCC scientists to deliver the Climate Reality Project, and is certified in organizational GHG accounting through the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, and is a sustainability practitioner through the Natural Step. Her experience also includes politics, and Angela has served as an elected official at both municipal and regional levels, elected on a platform of sustainability. And I just wanted to quickly add to this that when we were developing this program and being in the tourism industry, there's a lot of networking, and we all know each other regionally. And GreenStep, the name GreenStep kept coming up in all of these conversations that I was having. I know that GreenStep, they're working with RTO 9 right now on a regional level, as well as I think RTO 11. So I just commend all of the hard work that you guys are doing. Based out in BC, they really have quite a name here in Ontario, and I feel like we're all aligned with the same cause. So I'm so happy to have you guys here tonight. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Angela.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so very much for the lovely introduction. I am joined by two of our team members. We've got Jen Burling, our Director of Sustainable Tourism. So she really leads all of the programs and all of the work that we do through our Sustainable Tourism Division. And then Christy Dyer, who is our Program Development Specialist, who is helping us to continue researching and developing programs to help the tourism industry and other industries to measure and improve their sustainability performance. And I love your photo of your daughter and the heron, and that's really why I started GreenStep, was to help save the world, literally, by working with businesses and organizations to measure and improve their sustainability performance. And really excited to walk you through the introduction to sustainable tourism and the business case to sustainable tourism, and a few other very important and compelling reasons why your organization should get started. And you already have done that by participating in this program. As mentioned, I am from Kelowna, British Columbia, and would like to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Silks Okanagan people in Kelowna, where I am very grateful to live, work, and play. And I have been out to Ontario 2 times this year, and managed to get out there at least once a year for various initiatives and events. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We are going to look at the goals and objectives. Why are we here? Noelle shared that a little bit. We'll dive in a bit deeper. A program overview of the steps that we're going to take you through. So this session is really part of a series of sessions. So I would strongly encourage you to participate in all of them. And maybe if that is not yourself, assigning somebody from your team, if you have a team, and if it's a really small team or only you and your organization that can do this. I know that these sessions will also be recorded. So it really is meant to be a step-by-step approach to walk you through the process of developing a sustainability action plan with some goals and targets and action items for your organization. So really hope that you'll be able to work through each of those steps, and I'll walk you through what those are. We're then going to work to build a common language around sustainability and specific to the tourism sector, so that we're all talking about the same things and singing from the same songbook as your organizations work together. We'll talk about the business case. Of course, I think all of us understand some of the really imperative and important reasons from an environmental perspective, from a social perspective, and a cultural perspective, why sustainability is so important to people and the planet, but it's also really important to profitability and to the economy and to business. And so we're going to walk through the business case for sustainability. We'll look at how do we go about actually getting started and measuring our performance. Where are we at today, and how do we know what to do next if we've gotten started, or how do we know how to get started if we haven't? And then finally, Jen is going to walk you through how to go about getting an online account set up with our online assessment platform so that you can measure the performance of your organization in preparation for our next session. I won't spend too much time here, but I founded GreenStep in 2008, as mentioned, to help businesses and organizations to measure and improve their sustainability performance. And as mentioned, we've worked with thousands of organizations since that time, and we really like to practice what we preach at GreenStep. We've been a certified B Corporation since 2015, so we measure and report on our sustainability performance as an organization. We are powered by 100% renewable energy through Bullfrog Power. And each year we conduct a carbon footprint measurement of our own company. We have a carbon reduction strategy and actions that we've taken, and we also offset what emissions we cannot or have not yet eliminated from our organization, and we're certified as a carbon neutral business. So our goal through this process that we are about to embark upon are to provide you with that general knowledge on the topic of sustainable tourism, while also providing you with a pathway to understand how you can work to improve your sustainability performance and in turn help to progress sustainability within the region. And building upon the established FAB pledge and the Sustainable Tourism Code of Good Practice as a guide during our time today, and over the next few sessions, we will aim to support the objectives laid out in the pledge through the following key steps. So the first step is learn. That's what we're doing here today, building that common language. We're then going to help you measure your baseline. Where are you at today? And then work with you in the next session to create a bit of this vision of what you could look like in a future where your business or organization or community was fully sustainable and operating within a sustainable world. What would the headlines say? And from there, we're going to establish some goals that are customized for your organization. So we'll be doing some breakout sessions and getting you to do some brainstorming and thinking. So you'll really be making some tactical and tangible goals and targets, and then actions that you can take to reach those goals. So we want everyone to walk away with a completed action plan and a completed sustainability baseline measurement through the online assessment that we'll walk you through today. And then it really will be up to you to go ahead and implement that action plan. Track your progress, measure your success, report on that progress if you want, and then to go on to apply for awards or pursue certification, publicize what you're doing, and really celebrate your wins. So I just want to do a quick poll here to get started, and we can just, if everyone can just use the chat function in the bottom of the Zoom screen to let us know if you're an A, B, C, or D. A, you are a sustainable tourism guru. You know this stuff like the back of your hand, and you're not sure what you're even doing here. Or you're here to see if there's anything new you might pick up. B, you've been working at it for a while, but you still have some things to learn. C, you're fairly new to the concepts of sustainability in tourism. Or D, you'll admit it, you know nothing, and that's why you're here today. So would love to see a show of hands or a show of letters to see how you're feeling. There are no wrong answers. There's no judgment. I'm not going to call anybody out, but it's really just to get an idea of who's in the room and what level, baseline level is everyone starting with. So lots of B's and C's. That's great. Kind of what I hoped and what we expected to some extent. So that's really great to see. You can keep those answers coming if you wish. It will be good for us to understand that too as we continue working on the next steps. So it's really important, as mentioned, to build that common language around sustainability, really to get us all on the same page. So when we're using words or terms or talking about different organizations and acronyms, even that there is a common language. And as your community and as your region, communities and region continue to advance down this journey, this is going to be really important. Just understanding some of these key terms and the key language. So we're going to start with the basics. What is sustainability? So we're going to go way back to 1987 when I was a child living in Alberta. And that is when the Brundtland Report was published as an outcome of the Brundtland Commission. And in that report, it defined sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I think that is very similar to the definition of why we're here that Noelle shared at the beginning. And my mom always taught me, when you borrow something from somebody, you should give it back to them in as good or better condition than what you found it. And we are borrowing this planet and our communities from our own children and future generations, and we really need to be thinking of our actions with that in mind when we think about how we do things moving forward. So that's the initial kind of definition, globally accepted definition of sustainable development. But specific to the tourism sector, as I'm sure many of you have seen, over the past decade or two, there have been many terms used to describe tourism that's better for people and the environment. And some of the most common terms have included ecotourism, responsible tourism, and more recently, the term regenerative tourism has emerged. So let's look at what each of these terms means and provide some of that context. So ecotourism was one of the first things that was very specific to the tourism sector. And it's really a type of sustainable tourism product that brings guests into relatively undisturbed or wild areas in order to experience nature. So probably a lot of the reason why people come to your region. It's typically low impact, for example, things like sailing and hiking and kayaking and mountain biking. And it often promotes principles of natural conservation and sometimes local culture. And not every type of tourism operator can offer ecotourism, but ecotourism can be regenerative and responsible and sustainable. Regenerative tourism is much broader, and it's really a way of developing tourism, either at the destination level or at the product level. And it looks at ways that travelers can leave things better than they found them, creating a net positive impact, and often requires a place-based approach that considers the unique circumstances and opportunities of the host community or region. And it's really another way of applying circular economy principles to tourism. And the circular economy is defined as a purposefully designed socioeconomic system that's inspired by natural systems, which is regenerative of human and natural capital that works long-term for all stakeholders. So it could be a regenerative tourism, could be a tourism business that creates conditions for employment where people can thrive and grow while escaping the cycle of poverty. It could be an agritourism operator that builds back soils and ecosystems to support climate change adaptation, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity. It could be a lodge that's designed to produce more energy and harvest more water than it consumes. And it can even be something like as small as having a pollinator garden in an urban setting. If you can't, do all of the things that I've just mentioned, organizations and businesses and communities can start much smaller by doing things that are regenerative of people and the planet. And regeneration, of course, could also be an experience that helps to develop a cross-cultural understanding and respect for Indigenous people and other types of cultural diversity. So it really is about that healing and fixing things that maybe we've broken or undermined in the way that we've done things historically. So responsible tourism is really a term that's used interchangeably with sustainable tourism, but sometimes people think of sustainability as just to do with the environment. So responsible tourism has come up as well as a term that is used by industry to capture all of these things. Sustainable tourism really encompasses all of those things, and all of these types of tourism are essential to achieving sustainability. And the term and concept of sustainable tourism was born at the first World Conference on Sustainable Tourism in 1995, where the World Charter for Sustainable Tourism was originally adopted. And at that time, it was defined as tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. And in doing this, sustainable tourism ensures that all resources are managed in such a way that our global and local economic, social, and aesthetic needs can be fulfilled, while at the same time maintaining cultural integrity, essential ecological processes, biological diversity, and life support systems. And really, those are the things that all of us depend upon to survive, first and foremost, but also for our economies and for our communities and for people to thrive. Fast forward a few more years, couple more decades. In 2015, there was the World Summit on Sustainable Tourism Plus 20. So it was 20 years later after that initial definition. And there was a refresh of the terms and objectives of that initial declaration. And it accounted for major changes in the industry that had occurred. And at that point in time, it was stated that the question is no longer if sustainable tourism is a viable solution, but really just how far can we take it to realize tourism's full potential to bring benefits to local communities, support green growth and economies, foster innovation, safeguard cultural and natural heritage, and protect the environment. And according to the UN World Tourism Organization, the objective of sustainable tourism is to retain the economic and social advantages of tourism development while reducing or mitigating any undesirable impacts on the natural, historic, cultural, or social environment. And this is achieved by balancing the needs of tourists with those of the destination. And if we think about how sustainability in tourism can be applied in businesses and in destinations within your region, it's really helpful to break it down into three key areas of sustainability: economic, environment, and sociocultural. Sometimes those are broken into four pillars, social and cultural being separated, but those are really the people aspects. We've got the profit, the economic, the planet, the environmental, and the people, the social and cultural. So according to the UN World Tourism Organization, sustainable tourism should make optimal use of environmental resources, maintaining essential ecological processes and helping to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity. It should respect the sociocultural authenticity of host communities, conserve their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contribute to intercultural understanding and tolerance. And it should ensure viable, long-term economic operations, providing socioeconomic benefits to all stakeholders that are fairly distributed, including stable employment and income earning opportunities and social services to host communities, and ultimately contributing to poverty alleviation. So some visual models for these principles are the three-legged stool, which you may have seen before. And the concept is that if one leg of the stool is missing, then it's going to tip over. And it reminds us of the importance of achieving balance amongst each leg. And then using the language of asset management, which some larger organizations like to do, and sometimes communities use as well. We can look at it another way where we've got our financial and manufactured capital, our human and social capital, and the environmental and natural capital. So we really need to have balance amongst all of those things. We can't sacrifice people and the planet just to stimulate the economy or create jobs, because ultimately we're going to tip over and things aren't going to work anymore, because we really need thriving communities and people and ecosystems to support our economy. And another way of visualizing the key principles of sustainability is through this nested interdependencies model, where it helps us see that society is dependent on the environment, and business and the economy are dependent on both society and the environment, or people and the planet. And we really need the earth systems of producing clean air and clean water and healthy food and shelter. And some might even say that spiritual connection that some of us have with the natural world in order to survive. And our economy needs healthy and happy people who have their basic needs met in order to thrive. And what we do to one has an impact on the other. And looking back at the past couple of years, it's clear that when human health and environmental health are out of balance, our economy suffers. And one of my favorite ways of describing this model is the phrase that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. Building more upon these concepts, when we look at the principles of regenerative tourism and the circular economy, they can be described as tourism that creates a holistic understanding and living systems approach to tourism. So acknowledging that everything is interconnected and interdependent, and understanding the nature and quality of the interactions between stakeholders throughout the entire tourism value chain, as well as how they influence each other and the entire ecosystem. It should be collaborative, fostering collaboration and partnerships between a wide range of stakeholders. So it's so cool to see how many different types of governments, businesses, and organizations are represented here today. It's really important that we have that wide range of stakeholders coming together and collaborating around how do we solve these problems, because we can't do them on our own. We really need each other, and everyone has a role to play. So really challenging this current and past maybe competitive mindset that governs our dominant economic systems. Regenerative tourism is diverse by nature. It's securing various revenue streams to ensure that ecosystems and communities are less reliant on tourism income as a sole generator of the economy, and diversifying between the different segments of the market. So leisure versus business and domestic versus international, to reduce various economic and geopolitical risks and enhance resilience. And I think all of us can now acknowledge and respect that building resiliency into our communities and into our businesses is going to be really important as we face future challenges, future pandemics, future extreme weather events that are caused by climate change. Resilience is going to be super important for all of us. Regenerative tourism is inclusive and equitable. So it involves local communities to strengthen the overall ecosystem through, for example, collaborating with local suppliers, asking around who needs rooms and space, considering supporting refugees or others who are in need. So looking at ways that we can leverage resources within the community for diverse needs. It should be transformational and inspirational, creating authentic, immersive, and meaningful experiences for guests that bring forward the uniqueness of each place, and offering activities that showcase the cultural heritage, folklore, gastronomy, local landmarks, and wildlife in a responsible way. Of course, it should be environmentally responsible, so responsible environmental stewardship through the management of natural resources and biodiversity, protecting fragile landscapes and wildlife, and using an ecosystemic, circular, and non-extractive approach to how we do things. And finally, it includes cultural stewardship, and that's protection of local cultural heritage and traditions, and Indigenous people and ethnic groups who happen to be the best guardians of biodiversity and natural ecosystems, thanks to their ancient wisdom and knowledge passed on from generation to generation. So as you can see, sustainable tourism and how it can support regenerative tourism and regenerative communities is a fairly complex subject, and it can be difficult for destinations and communities and businesses and travelers and those of us supporting the industry even to really know what to do and where to start and what to look for, and even just getting the conversation started. But thankfully, there have been several international, national, regional, and local organizations created and some systematic approaches developed. And we're going to share those with you in a few moments, and really dive into what some of those frameworks are. We're not expecting everyone to kind of boil the ocean and try to tackle all of these issues and all of these opportunities at once. Really trying to help you find, where does it make sense for your organization to move the needle? Where do you feel called to make a difference? And what are some of the things that you can do in order to make that difference? So just one more reference to regenerative tourism that I think is really was really important to mention. So one of the ways of looking at regeneration is by leaving things better than we found them, as I mentioned, and really healing the things that we have broken in the past, or the systems that we have undermined in the past. So regenerative tourism and this pathway to sustainability does things like creating conditions where people can thrive, building back soils and ecosystems, supporting climate change adaptation, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity, creating things like net positive or living buildings, or retrofitting existing buildings in such a way that they're giving back more than they're consuming when possible, and again creating that cross-cultural understanding, and ultimately creating a net positive impact. So doing more good than bad. And there's some great books out there. This is one of my very first reads about sustainability in business, not specific to the tourism sector, but it's a book called Natural Capitalism, and it offers another way of thinking about the idea of moving from where we are today to a point where we have regenerated and restored and rebuilt what's been damaged. So it says, we first must reduce the negative impacts. We've got to do that, buying time essentially by becoming more efficient through operational improvements, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of those are. Creating positive impact, so redesigning how we make and deliver goods and services. It's really about systems change, and ultimately we get to a point where we've achieved net positive, where we're managing institutions and businesses and communities to be regenerative of natural, human, and all forms of capital. And if we can think about it, our positive impacts become the handprint of our businesses and organizations, which are quite distinct from that more negative connotation of the environmental footprint, those negative impacts that we're leaving. We want to tread more lightly and create more of a positive impact on people and the planet. And building on this theme, the book Upcycle suggests that rather than striving to be less bad, we need to focus on being more good. So if we take, for example, safety is something that a lot of businesses focus on and organizations focus on. If you're looking at safety or waste or accidents or carbon, normally you would chart the progress showing the metric going down. So we want to have less accidents, less carbon, less waste. But what if we flipped the chart and we drew the line rising from negative to zero, and then zero becomes not a culminating point, but a crossing point, and we go into positive territory. So if we look at this in a graph, we look at where we're at today. So we're creating negative impacts, we're creating carbon, we're creating waste. So if we want, and other impacts as well, and if we want to move towards sustainability, ultimately we need to find efficiencies and do less bad, operate more sustainably, but we still have work to do. And as we rethink and redesign our products and services, we continue to do less bad, but we also start creating systems and processes that are actually providing a benefit. And over time, we actually begin to restore and regenerate people and cultures and communities and natural systems that we've undermined for so long. And we get to net positive, and ultimately we strive towards this long-term goal of sustainability, where we can actually sustain our ways of life. We can sustain our ways of doing things in a way that preserves the ability for future generations to do the same and to meet their own needs. So for businesses and destinations that are, or communities that are looking at net zero strategies, some of that language often is used around carbon, getting to net zero carbon. So I wanted to share with you what some of those common kind of net zero terms mean. So net zero in carbon, based on science-based reduction targets and most calls to action, such as the Glasgow Declaration, and there are others that are really this global call to action, encouraging all businesses and organizations to reduce their carbon emissions by 50% by 2030, and then reaching net zero emissions as soon as possible by 2050, and ultimately getting to a point where we've reduced our emissions by 90 to 95% from current levels by 2050. And then offsetting what we can't reduce using verified offsets that emphasize carbon removal projects like tree planting, for example, to balance emissions that cannot be eliminated. And to get there, best practice and the carbon mitigation hierarchy suggest that first we want to look at avoiding. So how can we avoid emissions altogether through designing and purchasing things in a different way, or creating policies that require us to do things in a different way. Then we want to look at what are the ways we can eliminate carbon. So that can be things like fuel switching from a gas-powered vehicle to an electric vehicle, if that's possible and attainable for you. If it's not, maybe it's changing light bulbs and finding efficiencies. So we're eliminating carbon by making some changes and finding efficiencies. And also doing that through reducing. So we're reducing our carbon footprint by finding those efficiencies as well. And then finally offsetting, and that would be the last thing we want to do, but it is probably necessary for all of us to consider offsets as we work towards reducing our carbon footprint altogether. And again, those offsets that actually sequester carbon and pull it out of the atmosphere. And there are some technologies that can do that as well, but I think in particular in your region, some of those more regenerative opportunities for sequestering carbon, such as tree planting, would be beautiful ways of doing that. And protecting wild areas is another way of ensuring that we don't continue to release carbon. And of course, as a protected area, you're doing that very well. When it comes to waste and the definition of zero waste, that's also something that people think about when we think about net zero. So Zero Waste Canada uses the Zero Waste International Alliance's definition of zero waste. It's the first peer-reviewed and internationally accepted definition of the term. And zero waste is defined as the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production and consumption, reuse and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So essentially, zero waste in a business or community setting is achieving 90% or greater diversion of waste from the landfill and incineration. So you're hopefully working to reduce that first. If we look at the zero waste hierarchy, so rethinking and redesigning how we do things in a way just to produce less waste to begin with, reducing the waste to the landfill, reusing things, reducing consumption actually is really that second piece, reusing things, recycling and composting what can't be reduced or reused, and then looking at recovering materials from things that can't really be recycled or composted. Residuals management is now really getting into biological treatment and stabilized landfilling. So we're managing those residuals, and maybe we're extracting something out of them. And ultimately, what we just can't get rid of out of our systems, that's where incineration plays a role today, and what systems and policies we can put in place to ensure that we aren't just burning all of our waste, and that we're finding the highest and best use for that waste that does need to be created, and properly managing and finding opportunities to get waste out of the system in the first place. I'm just going to take another sip of water. So all of these things, and sustainability and regeneration and zero waste and zero carbon, being more mindful in how we treat people and the planet, are all lovely things to do, and most of us would like to do them. And often one of the reasons that we don't, and often what we hear from businesses and government, is that some of these things are not very good for the economy. But there really is a very strong business case for sustainability inside and outside of the tourism sector. Then one of the biggest myths is that it's just going to cost too much. And after working with thousands of businesses and organizations and talking to many tourism business owners and managers and within destinations and communities, I've consistently heard that most people want to do the right thing to become more sustainable in each of the pillars and areas we've just described, but they face these three common barriers. budget. They think there's a perception that sustainability will just be another line item on the budget, that it's going to cost too much time. Even if there was a small budget and a desire to do more, they're flat out busy just trying to run their businesses, keep their guests happy, and find or retain staff. And I know that's a huge challenge for all of us these days, finding time to do anything, particularly when there's staff shortages and knowledge. So even if you did have the time and the budget, most owners and managers and senior leaders and even frontline staff don't necessarily know where to start. And many have taken some great steps in the right direction, but it's been piecemeal and not really a strategic approach, and they don't want to know next. So don't know what to do next. So if that sounds familiar, that, you know, we've done some things, but we haven't, you know, been able to really make meaningful progress, you're not alone. At the same time, though, the demand for sustainability is growing. The public and travelers are becoming increasingly aware of the issues, and the demand for sustainable business and travel is on the rise. So research from a number of sources has identified this. Booking.com does a report every year looking at increases in the demand for sustainable travel options. 87% of travelers want more sustainable travel options, and 73% would be more likely to choose an accommodation provider if it has implemented sustainability practices. According to this particular survey, the biggest impact concerns for travelers include excess waste, threats to local wildlife and natural habitats, overcrowding of popular sites or destinations, and carbon emissions. And Deloitte and National Geographic have also conducted research on visitor behavior and future trends, and they've identified that sustainability will and truly has become a defining issue for the industry and a priority for travelers. In addition to that, traveler and consumer demand, employees are increasingly looking for values-aligned employers. So according to the Consumer Intelligence Series survey on ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which was completed by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2021, they polled consumers, employees, and executives and found that consumers and employees want businesses to proactively tackle sustainability practices, not just kind of react and adjust. So they're really expecting to see more, and more than 80% of employees are more likely to work for a company that stands up for good environmental, social, and governance practices. And I just heard a story of a woman who was being interviewed for a management position in a hotel that had claimed to have a very, good sustainability strategy. And in her final interview, she was offered some water and they gave her a plastic bottle, and she did not accept the role because she felt like the values of that organization were not reflected in their actions, and they certainly weren't reflective of her own personal values. So that is really becoming a trend. And one of the things that we're encouraging to advance that trend is really seeing sustainability not as just, a burden or one more thing we need to do or one more thing we need to add to the budget, but really as an enabler to meet the growing consumer and corporate demand for responsible business, to help avoid greenwashing and the opposite of that, which is green hushing, not saying anything about it because you're worried that you'll be judged or people won't believe you. So developing a sustainability strategy can alleviate that fear. It can be used as an enabler to actually cut costs, then operate more efficiently, improve profitability even, and then of course attracting and retaining those engaged and informed team members who really care about this stuff, and building trust and support within communities and within stakeholders, and making the world a better place by reducing our negative impacts on people and the planet and improving the positive impacts, which we like to call improving sustainability performance. To break all of that down in a way that actually applies some numbers to it, I really like to share this table, which was created by an author named Bob Willard. He's a Canadian author from Ontario, actually, and he has helped to quantify the impacts of responding to some of these demands and pursuing operational efficiencies from a financial perspective. So we'll break this down, and as you can see, if you've looked at an income statement before, we've got our revenue kind of on the top, and then below that we have our expenses, and then down in the bottom in this slide in the bottom right hand corner we've got essentially the profits. So that top line really comes from responding to the demand for more responsible business. It means retaining and attracting new guests, developing new products and services. And that could be things like maybe offering or if a brew pub started offering a certified organic line of beer, for example, or a tour company started offering tours, maybe just their whole fleet isn't getting transitioned, but they're starting to, they've added an electric vehicle to their fleet, and they're now able to take guests out for a zero emissions tour, and adding that as an option, or an eco-friendly wing at a hotel, or even a couple of rooms where you've really done some work to improve the sustainability experience and performance of those rooms. And therefore you're able to attract new guests and generate new revenue. On the bottom half of this, which is where most of the opportunity occurs, is the operational efficiencies. The biggest opportunity is energy. That most businesses that haven't really tackled energy efficiency have significant opportunities to reduce their energy consumption by 50 to 75%. That's a huge cost savings, and often many of those things can pay for themselves quite quickly. Reduce waste and materials are kind of connected. Less stuff coming in equals less stuff going out. Getting rid of things like single-use items and single-use plastics in advance of the bans that are coming through the federal government is a great way to reduce costs of purchasing those things. Then we pay to have them hauled away from our businesses. And then finally, that employee productivity and innovation and reduced employee turnover and expenses. Employee turnover is very expensive, and not being able to, have as many customers in your business or have as many people come to your community because you just don't have the human resources to welcome them can have a huge cost to business. So when we add all of this up and look at what is the potential from a financial perspective from tackling sustainability and being able to communicate and tell a story around what you've done, that can lead to an increase in profitability from 50 to 80%. And I always say, even if it's only 25 to 50%, 25 to 40%, that's still a pretty good improvement. On the flip side, that is the risk of doing nothing, of not attracting those guests, of not finding those operational efficiencies when you're in the face of inflation and carbon taxes and cost increases that are driving up your costs. And then, of course, not being able to attract and retain that top talent. On the bottom line, there's the potential to actually be less competitive, be less successful, and actually start seeing a reduction in profitability, which nobody really wants. So hopefully we now have a pretty good understanding of some of the core definitions and principles and why working towards sustainability is good for business, is good for communities, but with such a broad subject and covering so many different areas, how can we apply this to tourism? One of the frameworks that gets used quite a lot is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are really quite broad and a universal call to action by all countries to really promote prosperity while protecting the planet. And often people will use UN SDGs as one of the goals in their action plan. So we might have good health and well-being or climate action as a goal. But really, the SDGs don't really tell us what we need to do. They don't provide specific metrics for the tourism sector to measure or specific actions for the tourism sector or businesses in general to take. So they can provide some great overarching themes and goals. It's hard to know what actions we can take to get there. The good news is the Global Sustainable Tourism Council has done that. So the GSTC develops and manages the Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria, which gives us as globally recognized and vetted baseline standards for sustainable travel and tourism. They provide criteria for businesses and for destinations. They don't certify anybody themselves, but they allow certification providers like GreenStep to use their criteria as the basis from which to generate our own standards and our own questions and sets of criteria, which Jen is going to show you how to walk your business through those criteria or your destination or your community. And that really gives you very specific actions of how to bring all of these really complex subjects and refine them into very specific questions so you can start understanding how you're doing in a number of different areas as an outcome of that process. And the GSTC criteria and therefore the GreenStep criteria that you'll be using are both broken down into 4 categories. So the first is management. So we look at things like how organizations measure and manage their sustainability performance, whether you have an action plan with goals and tracking, whether you have employee engagement initiatives, visitor engagement programs, and how you're marketing and communicating what you're doing both internally and externally. And then the socioeconomic pillar really seeks to ensure viable long-term economic operations and socioeconomic benefits. And it includes things such as what the organization is doing around supporting social development, employment, training and equal opportunity, sustainable purchasing policies, and accessible facilities and marketing. The cultural pillar is about respecting the sociocultural authenticity of host communities, conserving their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contributing to intercultural understanding and tolerance. And it looks at what tourism businesses and destinations and organizations are doing related to interpretation and education, managing visitor interactions, protecting cultural heritage and living cultures, and to what extent you're featuring things like local guides and arts and crafts. And last but certainly not least is the environmental pillar, which is focused on how tourism organizations can help to maintain those essential ecological processes and help to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity. So here we look at things such as resource consumption and conservation, solid waste and wastewater management, carbon emissions and transportation, and protecting sensitive ecosystems. The environmental pillar is also, as mentioned, the primary area of opportunity when looking at the business case for sustainability, although there's certainly crossover with some of the other pillars as well. So the criteria that Jen is going to walk you through in just a minute, well, not the criteria per se, but the process of measuring your performance using the criteria is a free online assessment tool that we've created for businesses and for destinations. It can lead to certification, but it doesn't have to. It's there as a free tool for anyone to use to measure their performance. It's aligned with and has been formally recognized by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council and also is aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are 87 questions for businesses, 117 questions for destinations, and each one includes indicators that measure the sustainability in each of those key pillars: management, socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental. And we do have a separate dashboard that is available for destinations that want to use that dashboard in order to help understand how businesses within their community are performing. And it's even something that we could provide to help to see how businesses and destinations are performing within your region. And ultimately, it generates a scorecard that is available for, the outcome of the assessment generates a scorecard that's available for your organization to understand your performance at a high level and see where you're performing in all 4 categories. And I just wanted to note that even if you don't consider your organization specifically a tourism business or a tourism destination, and even though some of the questions may not seem completely relevant, it's still a very good exercise to go through. And there is the option to say we don't measure this, or we have an other for pretty much every question. So if you're feeling like, oh, this doesn't really apply to me, feel free to just say I don't measure this, or fill in something that seems to make a bit more sense to you. This is a tool for you to use in your organization, your business or your destination. So we encourage you to go through it and really focus your efforts on the 80 to 90% of questions that will apply to you. It has been designed kind of thoughtfully to make sense for pretty much any organization that's using it. And we have had not-for-profit organizations, visitor centers, and others that have used the criteria successfully to help them really measure their performance. But at the same time, you can actually get some great ideas for things that you hadn't even thought of doing before, which is really going to provide the basis from which you can generate an action plan. And we're going to walk you through how to do that in the next session. So communities and destinations should use the destination assessment, and then all other types of businesses and organizations should use the business assessment. There are some other ways to measure baseline performance. So in some of the work that we do with organizations to help them develop sustainability strategies, we'll sometimes use the sustainable tourism assessment. If it's a tourism business, we always do as the kind of high level way of measuring performance. But we also sometimes, depending on the goals of the organization, will do things like an energy assessment, a waste audit or a water audit, a carbon footprint measurement, a diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment, or an accessibility assessment, and then also surveying employees and guests and communities, community members, to understand how they feel about sustainability in relationship to your organization. So we're not going to go through how to do all of these things, because they do add another level of complexity and just one more thing to do. So we'll use the assessment as the primary tool for helping you to measure your performance. But if these things are things you might want to think about doing in the future, we would encourage you to add them to the action plans that we'll be developing in the next section. So I just wanted to share that with you, just to provide some seeds, plant some seeds. So really, at the end of the day, measuring your performance is one of the most important parts of a sound sustainability plan. I would say the other most important part is having some kind of a green team. If you're a really small organization or a sole proprietor, I get that that's going to be maybe a bit tough, but maybe you can get together with some other small organizations or businesses within your community to do this together, so that you don't feel like it's all up to you and you're doing it alone. So measuring where you're at today really enables you to see where you're at and allows you to measure your improvements or changes over time. And then once you've set some goals and some targets and created an action plan, you can actually feel like you're making progress and see if you're moving towards or away from those targets based on your results. So this is a tool and an assessment that we would encourage you to use each year to measure your performance and see how you're doing. So the session today and taking that online assessment will be the first two steps in what we call our sustainable tourism framework. And it's really been designed to help businesses and destinations advance from that more piecemeal approach to sustainability into something that's more strategic and ongoing and circular. It is a cycle of continuous improvement, and we're really excited to be working with you on this journey. So I'm now going to turn it over to Jen, who will spend the next, I'm guessing, 5 or 10 minutes walking you through how to take the assessment, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Thanks so much, Angela. Yes, I won't take up too much more of your time, and we will have some time for questions. And no matter how many times I hear that presentation, I always take something new away. So it's always nice to digest it a couple of times. So you will get a chance. I encourage you to watch it over again, and sometimes you'll take away something new each time. As Angela mentioned, I look after our sustainable tourism team at GreenStep, and we have a team of assessors and sustainable tourism specialists that work with destinations and businesses to help educate and advance their knowledge around sustainability for the tourism sector. So I'm going to walk you through how to access our assessment tool, how to use it, and then give you a little bit of homework to work on between now and our next session, which is coming up in just a few weeks. So I'm going to put you towards this slide here, where you are going to be asked to visit this link, which my colleague Christy is going to pop into the chat. And that is assessment.greensteptourism.com/free-score. And there is a link there in case you don't need to write that down. And it'll take you to this screen here. And you're going to need to create an account with an email address. You'll want to select either the top option if you're a tourism business or visitor center, or the bottom option if you're a destination marketing organization or a regional tourism organization. And don't forget to remember your password. And once you have created your account, you will be able to go in and out of that account. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about being able to save your responses. You don't have to sit down and complete the assessment in one sitting. You can come in and out of it, and it will save your responses each time that you log in and out. So that's where you'll need to visit. And I'm going to show you some screenshots of what it looks like. So once you've logged into your account, this is the screen that you will see. And you just need to click Launch Assessment, and that will bring up the questionnaire. So once the assessment has launched, it will look like this. Sorry if it's a little bit small. And you will need to expand the questions in order to see the answer options by clicking on the question or by clicking on the drop-down arrow to the far right there, which I'll show you another shot of. This is also just a little tip or trick to mention. If you hover over and click on the information icon on the right-hand side of these questions, a box will pop up to give you a tip or a trick or some added context to that specific question. And this should help to guide you to reflect on how that question relates to your operation, just to give you a little bit more insight into why we're asking that question of you. Once you click the arrow to the right of the information icon, the answer options will appear for each of those questions, and you can tick one or more boxes as they pertain to your business. There may be more than one answer option that is relevant or valid. So as you might be doing more than one thing within your business related to that question. For example, you may already have a mission or a vision statement that pertains to sustainability, and you may also already have some measurable goals in place as well. So you would want to tick both of those boxes. If you are not able to answer yes to any of the options provided, you can also click Other or None. If you click Other, then we do ask that you please use the comment box to describe your answer in more detail, because certainly there could be examples of programs or initiatives out there that we haven't included in these list of answer options, and we want to hear about those. And if at any chance that you don't have some of these programs or initiatives in place, then you do have the option to click None or No, or We Don't Track That. So as Angela mentioned, maybe that question doesn't apply to your business, so you would just click None or No, and we do not track that option. You do have to click something per question so that every question should be answered, even if the answer is no. That's okay. So you do not have to complete the assessment in one sitting, as I mentioned. Your answers will save, and if you leave the assessment and come back to it, your answers should be as you left them. You will just need to log in using your password and relaunch the assessment, and then continue answering the questions where you left off. If you were to sit down and do this in one sitting, I would say the average is probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It is 87 questions, and just depending on your knowledge level, or depending on the size of your business, you may actually need to go check with some other team members in other departments to help answer some of these questions. But you can go in and out of it, as I mentioned. And
just a quick note there, Jen, too, for destinations, it might take a bit longer. And that, probably would require a bit of a team approach if a destination is going to go through the assessment. I know there's some communities that might want to use the assessment. You could also use the business assessment if you really just want to look within your own organization. Kind of that's been used by organizations before. But most communities or destinations would probably want to use the destination assessment from a tourism perspective.
Yes, very good point. That destination assessment is a little longer, and so you may want to bring in a couple more members of the team to help with certain sections. At the end of the assessment, you will see a Submit Assessment button, and you can go ahead and submit once all of your questions have been answered, and that's circled at the bottom there. After you've completed your full assessment, you can go to the left-hand menu bar and click on Reports, and this will take you to the scorecard screen, which you can see here. This will show you an overview of your score as a total, by category, and by subcategory. And you can use the arrows on the left there to see the subcategories. The reason that the score says unverified at the top there is because the results have not been verified by a GreenStep assessor by the submission of evidence. This takes place when businesses or destinations are pursuing sustainable tourism certification. For the purpose of this exercise, we will be using your self-assessment results from which to build your action plan. If you were to become certified, then you can see the grading table at the top right, and then you could see where your score would fall within that table. So your submitted assessment is captured as part of our National Tourism Database dashboard, where we can see aggregated results by geographic region or sector related to all assessments that have been completed and submitted in full across the whole country. We cannot see the names of businesses, just the aggregated results by question category and overall. And this helps us to gain further insight into how the industry is performing across various geographic areas or by sector. And we use this data to help tourism organizations like RTOs or provincial associations to build programs to better support their industry. Again, your personal data and results are not visible or shared, and we actually can't even see your individual submission on our end. Only you can see your own results. So lastly, when you click on the arrow to open up the subcategories, you can see how many points were available in that section and how many were earned, as well as the result as a percentage score on the far right. This is the screen in which you will want to take note of the subcategories where you performed well, and also make note of your lower scoring areas, as you will want to consider these when you start to build your action plan for improvement. When uncovering your strengths, these may come as a surprise, or you may be well aware of the areas where you knew you were doing well. Either way, these strengths should be celebrated and highlighted in your sustainability story, whether that be on your website, your marketing communications, or with your staff and your team. And we'll get a chance to share some of those in our next session. So the homework before the next session is to create your account, is to complete your sustainable tourism assessment, to review your results, and make a note to yourself about maybe your top 3 or 4 performing subcategories. We can't wait to hear about all of those. And also make a note of your bottom 3 scoring subcategories. And those may be the basis of your action plan. And be prepared to share some of your findings in our breakout groups in the next session. And that is a wrap for both Angela and I, and we have another 10 or 15 minutes to answer any questions that the group may have. You can pop those into the chat, or you can simply unmute yourself, and Noelle is going to help us manage that if anyone has any questions.
I just wanted to say thank you both so much before we dive into any questions. I just have learned so much in this first introduction webinar. So I'm so excited. On behalf of our organization at the Biosphere, I'll be filling out the assessment for us as well. And I'm going to be joining this program as well with the businesses. And I'm really excited to see how we score and what we can improve on and where we're going to score when we culminate this in February. So I think it's a really great tool, and I'm excited to dive into it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Great. Thanks, Noelle.
Awesome. Thank you.
And as Angela mentioned, there is that destination assessment, and there's the business assessment. So depending on whether you want to assess a region, a geographic boundary, or your own organization itself, those options are available to you.
I see we have a question in the chat pertaining to the actual slides from Angela's presentation, and wondering if they'll have access to this afterwards. So I just wanted to mention that this is a recorded session, and we will be sharing this with our businesses afterwards. You can rewatch it, pause, fast forward, and have this information accessible to you afterwards.
We're also happy to provide the slides to you as well, Noelle, if you'd like to distribute those.
Oh yes, like as an actual presentation document.
PDF.
Yes, as a PDF. So we also we can do it that way as well, so that everybody has access to that information.
I just noticed a question from Dasha about a cafe and bakery. And yes, you would use the business assessment for your business. That's right. I see another question here from Cindy. If I'm a business, but also involved as a volunteer for a community group, is it possible to have access to both destination and business?
Yes, you just need to use a different email address for each one, so that you're able to set up a unique account for that. So the short answer is yes. That community group, depending on the type of community group, it may be more useful to take the business assessment for that as well. The destination assessment really it's designed for destination management organizations or destination marketing organizations or regional tourism organizations or DMOs, lots of words, looking at how they are supporting the tourism industry within their community to advance sustainable tourism. So it could definitely be relevant to a community, i.e. a local government. It may or may not be relevant to a community group, depending on kind of what your scope is and sort of who you're really, what's the word I'm looking for?
Governing or the jurisdiction.
Yeah, who you're supporting. Yeah, so that maybe, feel free to shoot an email over to Jen with the organization, and maybe we can provide a little bit of guidance on what might be the best approach.
Thanks, Cindy. We have another question. So they have two businesses. One is an accommodation that is off the grid, and the other is a business, an artisan soap maker with all natural ingredients and packaging. Should I fill in two different assessments? So I would say if they are in different locations and sort of run independently from each other, then yes, I would suggest that you do two assessments. And again, you would just need two different email addresses to do that, as only one email address can be associated with one assessment. If they are being run on the same property and sort of managed by the same people, and your processes and your procedures are, managed centrally, then I think you could probably assess your business as one. That would be my advice.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, if the soap is being made, in your home or not like a public facing place where you're really engaging customers as you're selling that soap, I think, but maybe you are selling it within your accommodation or providing it within your accommodation, I think it would probably make more sense just to do one, because there are a lot of questions about things like employee engagement and guest engagement and that type of thing. So if it's not really a consumer facing, you're selling it to people, but if you're not really having those interactions as much, maybe do the accommodation one first and kind of think through whether it would apply to do it independently for the soap business.
Thanks, Angela. Another question, would a BIA volunteer use a business assessment or regional?
That business improvement area, I'm assuming?
Association, maybe? Business Improvement Association?
Yeah, sorry, I just know that we have a business on today's webinar who she runs a business and then also runs our downtown BIA. So I know that she may be interested in doing two of the assessments. So I just thought I would ask that question if she hasn't already thought of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, okay, great. Yeah, I think, BIA. So that, yes, that's like I think about our Downtown Kelowna Association as an example. They're really trying to, support. I like that. Yeah. Unites downtown businesses and really supports, I guess, promoting downtown or the business improvement area as a place to come and shop and dine and experience.
Yes.
So that I would think a destination as I was saying those words, I was like, that's kind of like maybe a destination assessment, although we do ask questions about kind of the management and structure. There's nothing preventing you from getting started on the destination one and again, answering those questions that are most relevant to your organization. And if it really feels like it's not a good fit, you could think about it more, but because you represent and your stakeholders are businesses within that BIA and the people coming into it, I think the destination would likely be relevant.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Thank
and
you.
one thing to mention about the destination assessment is we know that associations or some communities or even DMOs do not have complete control over many of the sections that we ask about. That may default to a regional organization or even a provincial or federal organization that is mandating or legislating certain things within that area. We know that a DMO or a BIA is not going to be responsible for implementing a recycling program in your community, but we do know that you can also influence government and advocate for your stakeholders and your businesses within that region. So just thinking about that mindset as you're going through the destination criteria, that we do know that, we're not saying that you're going to be responsible for every piece of that sustainability assessment, but what we're asking is that you be aware of programs that are available and can be accessed by your tourism stakeholders within those areas.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jen.
And I know we've got Adriana from RTO 11 on the call. Hi, Adriana. Nice to see you. I think was there a question, or is she just highlighting her program here? Oh, she's just wanting to mention that businesses who are located within the boundaries of RTO 11 are eligible for financial support through RTO 11 to actually go through our Sustainable Tourism Certification Program. So that's a program that we're running with RTO 11 at the moment, and there's information there if anybody does fall within that criteria.
Yes, some of us are located there. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I also put a little note in there that just because I know we're coming up to the 7:30 p.m. mark, and I just wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight. And I know that I got a lot out of this. I'm sure everybody else did as well. I'm really excited to see where this goes in the next few months and everyone's progress. And I just really wanted to thank you both as well, and your whole team at GreenStep for delivering this presentation tonight, and to thank all of our businesses as well for their participation. And next steps moving forward, if everybody would like to have a look in their email tomorrow, I'll be sending a follow-up communication letter with the link for you to do your assessment as well as a survey. And if anybody has any questions, they can also reach out to me as well. So I wanted to thank everybody.
Thanks so much for having us, Noelle, and we look forward to the next session on December 14th.